things you've seen as far as what will improve sport behavior. But if you would, just quickly tell us your name, position, and organization. We'll start here on the end.
Good morning, I'm Judy Ulmer with the Indiana High School Athletic Association. Spent the previous 10 years in high school administration.
William Baxter with IHSA official.
Alva Amaker, A-Day Athletic Consulting.
Mark Goski, Chief Marketing Officer for the NFHS.
Luke Kudrowski, Coordinator of Publications and Communications for the NFHS.
Kristen Vanderwagens, coach at Xavier Club. Lily Hack, 10 years at Level 1 High School, and I'm here for our state association.
Jay Hammis, founder and president of Safe Sports Home, former teacher, coach, and athletic director.
Hi, Ted Cosgrove from Connecticut, recently retired athletic director after 30 years at Intercollegiate and Interscholastics, and currently vice president of the Mental Game Academy.
I'm Marty Reed. I'm with Positive Coaching Alliance, director of our national partnerships and DEI programming manager.
I'm Kenny Nahdi. I work for St. Albans School in Washington, D.C. the past 19 years. I'm associate athletic director.
Carol Wright, I'm from Georgia, High School Association Associate Director, does compliance, sportsmanship, and transfer eligibility. Former high school coach and athletic director, 31 years, 9 months, and 5 days. Don't miss it.
I'm Robin Hines. I'm the current executive director at Georgia High School Association.
Todd Tharp, assistant director with the Iowa High School Athletic Association.
Brian Hoskin, I'm with the Alaska School Activities Association. I'm a former high school principal, 31 years, and I'm the student services director.
My name is Joe Hines. I am the CIF San Diego section commissioner.
Ron DeChetti, I'm the executive director of the CIA.
Tom Keating, executive director of the Iowa High School Athletic Association, former teacher, coach, AD, and principal.
Let's go to Mike.
I'm sure. Mike Elson, Tennessee's athletic director, executive director, former athletic director at Independent School in Nashville. Was there for 35 years. Was the AD for 33 years.
Jeremy Swink. I'm a high school, junior high activities director in Iowa.
Dan Lee, administrator of the Illinois High School Association, also former teacher, coach, and athletic director.
Jeremy Holliday, assistant director at Kansas State High School Activities Association.
I'm Lene Alessi. I'm a project manager at 360 Group. We're the marketing partner of the NFHS.
Lauren Thomas, assistant executive director for the Vermont Principals Association.
Hi, Doug Youth, executive director of Ohio High School Athletic Association. In my 38th year in education, still consider myself an educator. I was a teacher coach, AD coach, high school principal, and 20-year superintendent.
I'm Bradley Lambert, the technology director for the Tennessee Association.
Chris Frasco, associate executive director at the Illinois Elementary School Association.
Nicole Shadebauer, I'm the executive director at the Illinois Elementary School Association.
Stephanie Bodette. I'm the senior manager of Unified Sports and Partnerships with Special Olympics North America.
Go, Elliot.
Good morning, Elliot Hopkins, NFHS staff, director of sports sanctioning and student services. Animal sports is baseball, wrestling, sanctioning, and student services.
I'm Christina Stigarelli. I work for Chester County for Westchester schools. I'm a campus safety officer for them, 2 years in, and a coach.
Charles Wyatt, executive director, Texas University Interscholastics.
Lance Taylor, executive director of the Arkansas Activities Association.
Robin Denver, training USA Cheer Staff.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sandy Searcy, director of sports. I have swimming, diving, softball, and water polo.
Data Pappas, NFHS director of officiating services.
Julie Cochran, director of sports at the NFHS.
Lindsay Atkinson, director of sports at the NFHS.
Good morning, I'm Pat Pizzarelli. I'm the Executive Director of Section 8 of the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, past President of the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, past President of the New York State Athletic Administrators Association, and was an athletic administrator for 30 years. I'm in my 7th year as the Executive Director, but 30 years before that I've been in AD in the district.
I'm just Matrice Merriweather, NFHS Chief Talent Officer and leading the National Diversity, Equity, Inclusion work.
I'm Chris Boone. I'm the Assistant Director of Publications and Communications for the NFHS.
Richard Recorder, Assistant Director at Tennessee.
Great. Appreciate the brain trust that's here, and think of things you've seen, best practices, and shared thoughts, and feel free to share as we go through what we've prepared. Speaking to a group of coaches in Illinois last week, and was having a conversation with a couple of athletic administrators. And I don't think any of us want to go back to the pandemic and what we had to experience with high school athletics then. But one of the athletic administrators brought up, you know, there was a positive when we had to have limited spectators wearing a mask, where it was now muffled voices and muffled responses in some cases. And actually some of our athletic administrators look forward to going to the games in some respects with sporting behavior back then. And also when people started coming back, they looked at it in the lens of a privilege rather than I paid a ticket, I have a right to spew out the negative things. But when it comes to behavior at sport in events, who is responsible? You know, I know in my experience through the years, there's oftentimes pointing fingers. I've attended away games where no one was there as far as being in charge. How do, in your experience, how do spectators know who is in charge? Go ahead.
Typically, they know by the person they think it's the person that's sitting at the door taking the money. That's normally the person they think is the head person. Other times, it could be the person that may be the one that is reading or doing the initial visitors, walking them over to where they want to be and facilitating that, your staff.
Appreciate that. And originally, the title we were given for this, and you might have even received it in some of the emails, was being the authority at sporting events. And Mike and I kind of wanted to do a twist, the opposite on that. We all know the power of team. And that's why we wanted to go with a team approach. Because when we look at, if we do what we've always done, if it's just the principal or the AD, solo versus team approach doesn't work. And we talk about the officials crisis. Well, in our ranks of athletic administration, we lose about 1/3 of our athletic administrators on a yearly basis. They don't look forward to going to games. They don't look forward to running inappropriate parents and fans. We need to keep, and that's one of our emphasis at the NIAAA, is to try to improve that turnover. But the team approach, the admin team, the volunteer army that we hopefully have at our schools. I know as an athletic administrator, I would look on a calendar of events that I had to cover. And on some days, a spring day could be home baseball game, home softball game, home soccer game, tennis match, track meet, and all those could be on the same day. I couldn't be the authority at all of those at the same time. and just with our admin team at the school covering all those. And so we have to be able to game plan. We have to have a team of people to cover those things. When we look at that team, who in your opinion has the most influence over sport behavior?
Coach.
I love to hear that, because I've seen coaches that they just want to point that finger at the AD, at the principal, and that's not their thing. But in my experience, that is the person who sets the culture more so than anyone, is that coach. And they have that influence over team members, over their parents, and it needs to be a responsibility that they see as being part of their job description. In fact, I think the job description of a coach in every school district should point to that. The interview process for a coach, yes, I think most people have a sportsmanship question or element to it, but it needs to be more pointed of what do you plan to do to have a culture that addresses the officials' crisis, that addresses the culture at your school that you want to be the coach of here at our school. But if we don't get more direct and more intentional in that, we're going to have increased challenges. Preseason meetings are crucial. I know in the last session it was brought up, sometimes there's no sportsmanship discussion. I haven't come from that world. The world I've come from is sometimes parents tune it out because every one of our preseason meetings we're discussing it. But one of the things I think in that preseason meeting that isn't done, that if I could go back years ago that I would have done more of, is yes, parents are the #1 problem, but we also have parents who have done it the right way. We have those examples in our schools, people that have gone through. We need to put them up in front of other parents in parent meetings, in preseason meetings. We need to let them share their philosophy, what they've seen through all of those formative years, what they've seen that's inappropriate, and what they've chosen to do in the right way. Because quite often, as we know, parents will listen to other parents. They will be influenced by other parents. As Mike and I collaborated in getting ready for this, we talked about 5 levels of influence. Obviously, there's additional ones, and you might see other ones as maybe more important. I was glad to hear the response of Coach. We have to do things intentionally different to make a dent and make a change. Old ways won't open new doors, but we need to rely on the different levels of influence. The average age of high school officials is mid-50s. I read something the other day that said under the age of 35, the officials under that age make up 13% of our officials nationwide. We're in a crisis, but those numbers indicate we haven't experienced what could be the worst. And we've got to do a lot more to change that. The crisis and poor sporting behavior problem is a shared problem. And we need to focus on these levels of influences. Wanted to ask the question of this group is, what success have you had or seen with these 5 levels in your realm and your experience? So what success have you had or seen with these 5 levels of influence?
I'll say, you know, as an athletic administrator, principal responsible for managing a gym or stadium, whatever, point number 4 is pretty critical with regards to identifying those student leaders, putting them on the first or second row, and then also having them demonstrate or set the example for the adults of how to behave at sporting events. And you don't want to take away their enthusiasm because they're supposed to have fun as well. But you can identify a couple of those leaders that, it goes back to the first session about relationships. And an AD or a coach having a relationship with the student body, and in the trenches knowing who's the respected leader. So I would lean there.
Appreciate that.
Jay?
I just want to add the possibility of having a 6th level being an athletic administrator. I know that you asked in the beginning who's responsible for the behavior. And that depends. You should have an incident commander at all your events. One person in charge, and that person should be identified in advance. And if the superintendents want to be there, then they have to show up for the game. And so you have somebody in charge. Now, away games like tennis, you're probably not going to have an incident commander there. It's probably going to be the coach. You ought to identify home and away, host school, visiting school. That's got to be discussed and should be identified. But I say the most influential person is going to have the best relationship with the students and parents.
Bill, I like what you said. It needs to be identified beforehand, but there need to be written plans indicating that, who is going to be the command center at the soccer game, all the baseball games taking place. Where are they going to be? How are people going to know they're the command center individual in charge? Back on the back row.
Yeah, we've done a few things. New York State mandates that the officials read a sportsmanship card to the captains, at every game. But we did our section, we went a little more than that. We said that they have to read it to the entire team and the coach. The coaches before the game. It just talks about sportsmanship, that they don't tolerate racial, ethically, gender-based bias, things like that. So we've done that. We also, in our section, along with our neighboring section, section 11, that's Long Island, Nassau, and Suffolk counties, we teamed with the Long Island Nets at the NBA G League. And the goal of this group is called Team Up for Unity, we call it. And it's trying to get rid of bias in high school athletics, high school and middle school athletics. So there's actually a statement that's supposed to be read every game before the game is played. And we'd love to have the athletes actually read it to the spectators. Does it happen all the time? No, it doesn't, unfortunately. So we've done that, too. We also have a creed. Okay, it's creed at Section 8 athletic events. Talks about things that just because you buy a ticket, you're not entitled to say whatever you want. And it's a whole list of things here that we've done. So we're trying. Are we making it dead? Hopefully, but is it still where it should be? No, it's not.
Actually, to echo off of that, you and I touched on it yesterday too. You touched on the parents and then giving them a voice in this. And then today, I think one of the crises I think we have is students have lost their voice. And social media and cell phones, I think, are a big component of that. In Connecticut, we've got a model that a lot of schools try to follow, that's similar to New York, a sportsmanship statement pregame, where state championship games, it does happen. And there's a component, there's 2 sections to it. And a visiting team reads one section, the home team reads the other section. And then some schools have adopted that for all home events as well, to put them up there. And then to take it to another level, that preseason parent meeting that you have, and when you address the sportsmanship stuff. I don't know if you guys remember, there's a school in Connecticut I remember taking away from one of our sportsmanship things years ago, where they actually had their students present. I ended up adopting, was that you?
That was my school.
I ended up adopting that, Steve, and it was really powerful. And initially working with my student group on that stuff, initially they were slow, but then there was a couple kids that stepped up, and they loved getting up there. There were some kids that, there was nothing crazy, but really wanted to give that message to the parents as to what the expectations were. And so we had the template of what we would have presented, and then worked with them if they wanted to make some tweaks to it. And that had a little cachet too, but again, it's the consistency and the follow through, and then having that backup when you do have those issues to go through and make sure it clicks.
Used to use the Connecticut video with Susie Culver.
Yes, yeah.
It was an excellent parent meeting.
Well, I show that still. I was going to say, and I'm going to talk about this later, my session is, you know, how you have the levels of influence. So I had to step out because I got a turf, track, and locker room project going on. But I shifted and I made the athletes one. And empowering them to do it has forced the coaches to make it more important to them. But again, I'm going to discuss that. And I thought that was a big way to change the culture, is empowering kids to take the change.
We had a rival school that every time, the whole week before we played football, basketball, volleyball, around the clock supervision to protect the school building. We were the Wildcats, and you know, we would get kitty litter all around the building, and a number of things would happen to their school, and it led up to the build up to the game. A number of the parents thought it was cool that their kids did these things, and it built up to a lot of negativity in the stands between the two schools. It didn't help with the build up with officials and their treatment, but we combat that with Pink Night, where we did a night where we started with a wrestling duel between the schools. The girls and boys came back to back. We honored cancer victims. We had the student bodies work together. And it actually kind of confused some minds of parents and kids that wanted to do the negative, because they weren't going to do that with the cause that was involved. And it helped change some culture things for us in a positive way. 4 roles of inappropriate sport behavior that Mike and I looked at. Instigator, and these roles can be seen in groups of parents, students, coaching staffs, and parents. You can have a coaching staff where most of them are solid with officials and with behavior, and it could be the head coach, it could be an assistant coach, that they are an instigator and cause damage. The same thing with participants, same thing with our parents in the stands. You have the accomplice who jumps in and joins in with that instigator. You have the bystander, and in the previous session we heard a little bit about bystanders, where some are amused, some are appalled, but they do absolutely nothing. And then we have upstander. What is an upstander? I heard somebody.
Somebody's afraid of a fight between two guys and yeah, like my other daughter plays soccer. I mean they start going at each other, and you don't even really know the parents that well, but you gotta get in between them.
Yeah, and I think Anne Marie said it pretty well. She's an upstander when she goes to a game. She sees something that's wrong and inappropriate, and she says or does something about it. It takes a lot of courage, but these kind of individuals are agents of change, and we need agents of change. We need to recruit parents, participants, stakeholders to be agents of change. Upstanders are the potential MVPs of our team approach, and we've got to make sure we have these individuals as a crucial part of our teams. Upstanders on our team, who are our upstanders? Parents that we empower, team members that we empower, that we encourage to take ownership. Cheer squad, a great advisor and a cheer squad can help in a number of ways. Booster club, other parent groups, clubs and organizations at the schools, student body officers that welcome officials, that welcome other teams. Crucial to be not only hospitable, but also the different ways that we can humanize, one, the officials, and two, the opposing teams. To change the culture, but we have to have buy-in to stand up for what's right and for what's needed to improve the culture. When we're able to have stakeholders hold each other accountable, that's when we're able to see change and the changes that we need. Any shared experiences that any of you have had with upstanders? Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a mother of two of our basketball players, and she wasn't the best citizen around school. I mean, the principal and the administration had called the police several times when she used to come in to advocate for her boys. So we're at a basketball tournament, and she's in the stands, and I'm actually there. It's a Christmas tournament. I'm actually there sitting maybe 15 feet away from her. And one of the visiting team, the team we're playing, the fans start yelling at the official. She stands up and starts telling the people, we don't do that. We cheer for our kids and our officials. So Mrs. Small, that was about 15 years ago, but Mrs. Small got the idea. She understood where I was coming from anyhow as the athletic administrator at our school. So she was definitely an upstander that night.
We need more of those
Absolutely.
individuals.
I have a question for administrators from a standpoint of risk management. I totally believe that we need upstanders, but is there a potential risk, especially in today's climate, where parents stepping in could escalate the situation more so, potentially? Like, do you want a parent stepping in, or do you as the administrator want to be the one to mitigate?
I think any of our upstanders need to know they have administration nearby, school resource officers, people that will support and protect.
Good question. What's your name?
Lene.
Lene. If I was the parent and I was going to de-escalate you, it depends on how I would handle it. Hey, knock it off! I'm sorry. The way you approach that is, and yet, how do we train parents? I'm doing a session this afternoon at 3:30, and it's all about proactive game management, getting out in front of these things before you spin out of control. And de-escalation skills is number one.
Jay's session's excellent, seen it a number of times. And that's crucial, not just in that parent approach, but as administrators, we have to respond in a manner to de-escalate rather than be escalators. And the words, the approach, the demeanor, the tone, all of those things come into play in a big way.
I just wanted to comment and said something about greeters. We have greeters when teams come to something we changed a few years ago, and it's been pretty awesome. And you know, I come from a school, I'm not gonna lie, we're very well financially supported. And so what we did with the greeters is when we come up and meet the other team, we actually are giving them snacks for after the game. And it really helped, like, oh wow, this is cool, or like we have a big Chick-fil-A in town who the owner's a former athlete, you know, for our rival games, we'll go there after the games with that team. Again, we're lucky to have a lot of financial support, but having those greeters makes a big difference. You know, hi, welcome to the school. This is where the bathrooms are. Let me show you where to go. Here's the key to the locker room, so you can lock to the coach and you can lock it up. It's made a difference. I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, and it's good that it's not just the AD taking care of the officials. When other groups, whether that's student body officers, whether that's a team assigned, a parent, team booster, or a group of parents, it humanizes. We need to humanize. I'm going to try to move a little quick because I don't want to take Mike's time. But we do have to make sure it's not an us against them approach as far as the culture goes, a team approach, and ownership and accountability. with parents, I know as a coach, I used to think, why do these parents not get it? And as an AD, I also thought that, but when we think about it, they haven't been trained, they haven't been taught. And actually, what they came through the lower ranks, they have come up in a lot of cases thinking this is the way we respond, which is negative. I spent a couple of years with my friend Mike Elson. We created a leadership training course partnering with parents to improve the sport behavior culture. And it was something that was helpful for us in our own realm, but also hopefully helpful for those in the trenches around the country. But it's hard to get parents to self-assess. Some obviously think they're not a problem, and some think that are a problem think it's everybody else that's a problem. And so we need to get them to change and adjust their lens. Shane, can you play that?
Hey, conductor, how about something new? You played this last year.
Come on, get your head out of your sacks.
I'm trying to hear. I'm sick and tired of hearing your kid play the wrong note. Where's my kid solo?
At least you can see your kid. Why is my kid stuck way in the back?
The conductor only plays his favorite.
My friend Mike plans to play this on his video board Friday nights under the lights when things get a little bit intense. But you know, there's things like that we can use at games. If you have a video board, parent meetings, parent sync video is one I've used. But we need to utilize things to adjust the lens. Go ahead.
Okay, so, yeah, see, this is what happens to me. Rich is 6'9". I'm 5 foot. I call it 5'9". Trust me. I wish it was 5'9". So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about strategies when parents cross the line. And if you've been to an athletic event, you've had parents who have crossed the line. And you have to deal with that. As a young administrator, sometimes I would hope that it would go away. It never goes away. It'll be there at the next game. You've got to have the courage to step up and address those people in a timely fashion. Usually, location, you can move towards them, whether it be students or whether it be parents. And you can kind of change their demeanor. I've pulled parents aside, told them they needed to take a time out. I told them they need to go to the concession stand, get some popcorn. And sometimes that'll work. Sometimes if you can refocus them, because I truly believe this, most of our parents are awesome. Most. It's the low percentage of parents who think that their voice matters and their willingness to voice what they think that is the problem. Most of our parents they come to the games, they do what parents are supposed to do, they cheer their kids, they cheer the other kids on the team on, and they're supportive. And so we're dealing with a small percentage of people, but we do have to deal with them. Sometimes they cross the line. I had this story where, and we talk about the upstanders. So I'm at a football game. We're not very good. Parents have been, kind of rumbling all year. And so this one parent, he's about 6'4" or 5". He's kind of a big guy. He's yelling and screaming. Not just at the officials, at our own players, at our coaches. I mean, everybody is being attacked by this guy. And so we have a parent who's an upstander. He approaches this gentleman. They're standing on the fence and says, "Hey, knock it off." I mean, this is not appropriate. Our kids are playing as hard as they can. You know, we need to be positive. Guy gets upset with him, knocks his hot chocolate out of his hand. I happen to notice it. I immediately walk over to the guy. He's confrontational. You try to de-escalate. He was having nothing of it. He was going to have his way with this other gentleman who was trying to de-escalate. He was having nothing to do with me, and said, "Hey, look," I said, "If I need you, I'll go get an officer." And look, you know, when I was at an away event in the office, I went up and introduced myself to the officer and told him, you know, if anything goes wrong with our parents, this is where I'll be stationed, come and see me. He did the same, so I went and found him. Brought the officer back. Of course, the parent at that point was going, "Well, you didn't have to do that." And I said, "Hey, look," I said, "if you get to know me, you're going to know that I'm really good for my word. I told you I was going to go get the police. I went and got the police." And then I told him, "You'll be getting a phone call from me to meet next week." And so I called the gentleman up and I said, "Hey, we need to meet." And he says, "Well, how's this going to go?" And I said, "Well, it depends on you." And so I met with him, and you know, sometimes you kind of know right off the bat when you sit down with people, is how's it going to go? Some people, it's going to be, they know they've messed up. I had the parent who started telling me about how he watched my kids play and really enjoyed that, and I gave him my letter. I always document what I'm going to do, what their penalty's going to be, and I gave him my letter, and he says, "Hey, can I get a snapshot of you and me with this letter? I'm going to put this in my man cave." And I'm going, I don't know if I'm reaching this guy or not, but luckily for me, that guy I never had a problem with. Again, but you have to be willing to step up and address these people, because actually you're not just addressing them, you're addressing everybody in your crowd. You may not recognize it, but parents talk, and if they know the consequences of their misbehavior, you may have solved that with several parents in one day with one penalty. Because usually for me, they're out the next game. I've had some where I've made them miss 4 or 5 games, depending on how egregious the incident was. So, but you have to deal with it. You have to document it, and you have to kind of plead with them that, you know, you have these the parents have these expectations that their complaints are going to change the results. Their complaints don't change the results. You know that, I know that. If the officials aren't very good, aren't very experienced, it generally gets worse. And you know, I've always told myself, you know, and I tell my coaches this as well. The outcome is, you know, for parents, they think they're going to change the official's mind. They're not. And generally what they do, our kids get embarrassed. Our kids stress. The coach stresses about the calls. And generally, it's a runaway freight train from there. Things go worse for your team when you start to get emotional about the calls and things like that. So I try to plead to the parents, your son or daughter will not play better if you're embarrassing them in front of their peers and your peers. And generally, you can see a light bulb go on with them that, yeah, you're probably right. But so that's just one thing that I try to do with strategies with parents. How am I doing? I got 3 minutes. Is that what I got? No, I got all kinds of time. So role as an administrator, and one of the big things that I think about this is I like to go to games and I like to be a fan. That's not what they're paying me for. That's not my role when I go to games. Yes, I want to try to watch our kids play. I do. That's really important to me. I have parents that come up to me all the time and tell me what an awesome job I must have. You get to go to all these games and watch your kids play. And of course, yeah, it is. It's awesome. It's great. And don't get me wrong, I love watching our kids compete. But I'm there for another reason as well. And so I think it's important that you're visual to fans, be it home and away. I think the fans, when they walk in the door, need to know who you are. That may not be that you're introducing yourself to them, but they know you're in charge. They know if they've got a problem, they know who to come to. I think that the way your team presents themselves when people walk in the door, are the people at the gate positive? Are they helpful? Are they glad to be there? Do they want to be engaging to the spectators when they walk in? I think you change people's attitude the moment they step on your grounds. And so you can change it for the good or you can change it for the bad. Do they know where they're going? Do you have lots of signage? Stuff like that, which we'll get into in a little bit. So be visible. I always try to greet or have one of my team greet coaches and the team bus when it arrives. As a coach, I can remember showing up at schools and had no idea where I was supposed to be, no one around to be found to lead me to a locker room or to the venue, and it just kind of gets things started off in a bad way. And so we try to be visible, we try to greet teams. I try to always go talk to the opposing coaches, let them know who I am, shake their hand. Many times they already know me and I already know them, but I still want to take a moment just to make myself available to them. Visible with officials. They should always know your location. If you're going to have an event and you have officials, they need to know this is where you're going to be standing. This is where, if they need something, they can run by the baseline and say something to you if it's a basketball game, or I stand in the end zone at a football game. If they need me, they know where they can get me. Because sometimes there's fans that are not yellers and screamers, but they're sitting on the front row, and when the official walks by them, they're pretty sneaky about it. They can insult with the best of them and not raise their voice. And those people are just as bad as the people standing up and yelling and screaming. So I want officials to know where I'm at. I try to see them before every game, and I try to see them after every game. I think we got to show them how much we value them. They got to feel good about coming to this game and putting themselves out there. I mean, much like Rich and I are putting ourselves out there today. We're a little nervous. We're worried about how we're going to do it. But officials do that every night. They're putting themselves out there. And we have to let them know how much we appreciate the fact that they're doing that. They're not going to get every call right. Gosh, I watch Major League Baseball, and they've even got now the strike zones. Those guys miss calls. They do. The guys that we hire, they're going to miss calls. They will. It's okay. Not every game hinges on a call. It doesn't. We have other opportunities to make it right. And I think you need to prioritize your proximity. We have a plan with our team, my principals, particularly at big games. My principals have our student fans. They'll take some of our parents as well, but that also is relying upon myself and my assistants to manage that. But again, I think you need to be proactive. It's not going away. Steps for Okay, steps for establishing a positive sporting attitude. I personally had a thought process of what I think we should look like at a game, what our fans should look like, how we should behave. And I try to share that with as many people that will listen. And people know at Mooresville, one of my best compliments was the other day. I was dealing with a parent who didn't think I knew the transfer rules. Okay, I've been doing 27 years. They've changed a little bit, but I'm trying to explain to this parent about the transfer rules. He's not having it. I know the rules. I've investigated. I said, well, I'm just telling you right now, this is what you have to do for your son to be eligible. I said, you need to let me know when you've taken care of that. Weeks go by, I never hear from a person. So I call him up. I said, hey, look, haven't heard back from you. What's going on with your son coming to our school? He said, you don't care about kids. All you care about is the sportsmanship award. And I'm thinking to myself, hey, I think I'm making an impression on people. This person hasn't even played a game for us. And this parent already knows how much I value sportsmanship. And so he thought he was insulting me. That was one of the best days of my summer, I'll tell you. But we still haven't resolved the transfer issue, though. He still doesn't get it. So, school board, your school board needs support because there's going to be moments when you're going to have to talk to people in your community that have influence. And you can't be afraid of them. You can't be afraid to take them on. You got to be smart enough to do it tactfully, respectfully, and professionally, but you have to address them just like any other person in your community. And and at that moment, your school board has to trust you that you're doing the right thing, and you build trust by communicating with them. Our administrative team, our superintendent, assistant superintendent, I talk to them daily almost about stuff like this. I keep them abreast of what's going on in our school, what's going on in our teams, what's going on in our coaches. I've got one coach that his sportsmanship could improve. And I've had multiple conversations with him. And I tell you, you need to address our kids. You need to be more direct with our kids about their behavior. He says, well, I just don't know what's allowed and what's not allowed. And I looked at him and I said, I'm the authority here. I'm telling you that's not appropriate. I plan on being at every one of our games. So you need to meet my standard. Don't worry about the official standard. If you meet my standard, it's going to be well within the officials. And I think sportsmanship is not a checklist item. That's something that you have to address daily, weekly, ongoing. Every meeting has to be at the forefront of your conversation with your kids, your students, and your coaches. Rewards, we do some stuff. We try to recognize kids if they've done something that is sportsmanlike. We'll introduce them at a game. We'll kind of describe what they do. Our state association gives us pins that we can give out to kids. That's a really neat thing to do. And so, but we're not always looking for the bad stuff. We're looking for the good stuff too. Describe good behavior to people. Sometimes our kids don't really know what a good sportsmanship act is. And it's helping a player up if they've been knocked on the ground. It's patting them when they make a good play. Try to get your kids to identify that stuff.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, fire away.
Sorry, you just said about rewards.
That's good stuff.
How many other states give out like state awards for sportsmanship?
New York.
I'm just curious. we do in Connecticut, it's called a microscope, you have to do certain things and make presentations. I was just wondering, curious.
Yeah, in our state, Indiana, we have a sportsmanship score. It's on our page, what we call our My IHSA page, where you go for all kinds of information, and your sportsmanship score is front and center. It's a little graph. You know, you lose 5 points and it goes down. You gain 5 points for some act. Opposing teams can give you points for doing things for them that they felt was good sportsmanship. I really think, again, I think it's really, we talk about the bad stuff. Sometimes we need to describe the good stuff and take the time to do that. Yeah.
Just building off of that, we always talk about rewarding the type of behavior that we want to see more of. We reward, the players, the kids. We also reward coaches. Does anyone have any experience with any rewards they do for parents that are doing it right, or any
Awesome idea, yeah.
incentives? Maybe they get free tickets to the game or a special seat at a game or something like that?
So, I mean, we do a lot of this stuff, but one of the reward things that I do is if the parent takes the NFHS sportsmanship course and they show me their certificate, we have two things that we do. They can trade it in for swag, or we have the app, it's the Superfan app, and they can earn points on it towards like rewards in our app.
Okay, I love that idea. Because you're right, we probably, at least in our building, we work really hard at rewarding kids, be it our athletes and or student fans. Never done anything with their parents. Probably should, yeah.
It actually ties back to the upstander component as well. One of the things I ended up doing, so we have the Class X school program in Connecticut, and so that obviously we're preaching that, we're teaching that, and I had I think it was a conference playoff game. It was away, it was against our next town rival, and I had an event at home, so I couldn't get to that. And the game came back, and we were just excited to actually make the playoffs. We weren't that kind of a team, so for us to get to the playoffs was significant. We ended up losing in extra innings. I was still there at my event at home, and our team bus came back, and my coach was like, I got to talk to you. And it went into extra innings. Something happened where parents from both sides started screaming at umpires and then screaming at each other. And one of our players, she was a sophomore, soft-spoken young lady, a role player, got out of the dugout and just pointed to our side. And again, kind of like a story like yesterday, where not necessarily totally appropriate, but got out and said, what are you guys doing? Please sit down, shut the up, let us play this game. And so two things happened with that big time upstander moment. Someone that was kind of espousing to some degree stuff that we were talking about, but then talk about teachable moment and leadership teachable moment, where it sat down with that young lady, basically, celebrated courage and leadership, but then had an opportunity that how, if you had to do it again, not saying don't do it, but how would you do it the right way to even be that much more impactful. And because of that, we ended up creating a Class X sportsmanship award. She was the first recipient. Even with that issue, a couple of people took issue with it, but just to reward that kind of behavior moving forward for even our students gaining that voice as well.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And actually yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a question, just being newer to the schools, but also being a coach. When our teams get together and they have captains, right, for officiating purposes, those officiators at the beginning of each game talk to captains about the rules, the regulations, the integrity of the game, right, how it's supposed to be played. But it's never vocal to everyone. You can't hear that conversation. And it would be nice to have the officiators to be able to have a microphone that speaks so everyone hears what's going on at that beginning. It's a reminder of why we're there and what the rules are for everyone. Even the players, when they're on and off the field. But it also extends because then you can get the community that's on both sides to hear that as well. And it's just a reminder, they do it during major sporting events. Either after the national anthem or before. And I think that's a reminder to everyone
that's there, that it would be very helpful.
Yeah, good stuff. We actually give a sportsmanship award. Every team, we give 4 awards for each team, and one of our awards is a sportsmanship award. Every team gives one. Yeah.
I was sitting explaining here at the PowerPoint, and one thing I've noticed we haven't said much about is also about the announcers, the people behind the mic. You know, they captivate everybody's attention because so within the event, within the game, you know, being sitting getting nuggets like the bench bad behavior, you know, that should be something that's to be said different points at different times within the game. So when you start hearing that little chipping within the crowd, the announcer come on like, give that cue, knowing the cue to be able to now make an announcement, just to a reminder in the atmosphere that we need to be mindful of our behavior. Because you say at the beginning of the game, respect the game, that's the only time it's heard. You know, it's not enough to be able to kind of continue to redirect.
They might know a good time to cue up one of our great PSAs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good stuff.
The lays are part of it.
Yeah,
I just wanted
she
to
is.
say that, just to remind you all that on benchplaybehavior.com we have a toolkit where there's resources like PA announcements. We've also got a parent-player contract. We've got web ads that could go on the ticketing app or whatever it may be. And I've taken lots of notes on additional ideas like an email to be sent out to an email list, things like that that we can include in that toolkit as well. And we're going to be launching the new look for the campaign in September, so it's going to have all new resources in it, and I just encourage you all to keep an eye on it and download those resources and use them.
Yeah, and they produce some awesome stuff, which we use. Awesome stuff. Next level. Yeah. I'm going to hurry on here. So we're kind of running out of time. Yeah, and probably lastly, fun suckers. Do you know them? I'm one of them. Just ask our coaches, just ask our parents, just ask our students. I don't mean to be that. Someone has to be that. Someone has to guard the integrity of your community. That's you. That you're the gatekeeper of that. You have to be willing to keep people in check. Now, I think there's a way you can do that. You got to do your work up front. You don't want to be doing your work at the game. That they should already know. You know, sometimes all I have to do is look at our student crowd. Boom, changes everything. Sometimes I just have to walk over to our parents, sit down, changes everything. Don't have to say a word because they know where I stand. And but you got to do that work up front. So
that's the difference between crowd management and crowd control. You know, the pre-planning, and you know, a lot of times as athletic administrators, you know, we go through the routine of game, routine of event, you know, without thinking about, okay, are we managing the crowd or are we controlling the crowd? I'd rather manage than control. You know, and then you got to look at, have we set all the things to be prepared for going from an event, which is the game, to an incident, and so we should erupt. You know, so that preparation of an organization or a team or a coach or school, just knowing like what's our level of readiness and how have we really prepared, you know, for this event. And we do a lot of things with this homecoming, you know, because you got tailgates, you got this and that. And that same energy is not given on a regular day-to-day game. And I was like, if we think about every game as homecoming and we put that much preparation in there, then we need to be mindful that we need to really consider doing that on a regular basis. That way it's consistent and it's not like a big show for, you know, for
Control is us against them.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're supposed to be on the team.
Exactly.
yeah. And great stuff. We're going to shut it down there. Really appreciate the opportunity and look forward to the rest of the day left.
Bruce is that? Yeah, we're going to have just a brief summary of each of the sessions when everybody gets back in here, and then we'll have lunch at noon here. So sit tight, As soon as Anne Marie gets back in here, Rich and Anne Marie will give us a little brief synopsis of the sessions we just had.
So just a quick recap of the breakouts for those of you that were in one, might be curious about what happened in the other. Hello, Rich Barton. So Rich was in the other, and Mike, and my name is Anne Marie, and we are going to talk about the media one just really briefly. What we talked about, our conclusions were we really need an education for the media in terms of the differences between high school, college, and pro coverage, because it is very different in a number of ways. We talked about the language that you would use, whereas if I was calling a professional level game, I may say he absolutely destroyed the defense on that play, or I might be, in terms of an international this summer, calling some things, you know, he's gotten beaten now twice on net side. He needs to be able to move across there and receive this. If that same play happens at the high school level, I do it the other way. Fantastic cut by that athlete, right? It's about the positive spin. People aren't thinking about that. So that's one of the things we talked about, is teaching media members, new media members, especially because there's all this online media now, where they haven't had that training to be mindful of their language. JP Murrieta, my co-host, co-moderator of this, had some terrific things that they're doing in New Mexico in terms of sending out expectations. If you're getting a credential from us, here are expectations. And I thought it was really reasonable. As a journalist, I thought it was really reasonable because it wasn't telling you what you can and can't say at all. It was setting the basic guidelines of what it is. And I like the idea of having someone available to answer questions. I think it's really important, coming from a strictly media side, that I need to be able to ask questions of someone who it's not going to be a media person freestyling what they think happened here or there. Bill and I were just talking about that for the officials, and I thought that's absolutely critical, because in college, if a game's going on and I have a question about a call, I slip out my phone and I text the liaison. We don't have that in high school sports. I think media members need to know that. You never talk about the official. I always go up and introduce myself to the officials for collegiate and pro games, and I say, as long as I know your name, I never say it. You know, because it's just to make that contact and have that relationship. In high school athletics, we can't do that. You're not going to be talking to the official, so to have some kind of liaison is important. It's about setting expectations, understanding the difference, and that there is a difference, and that the goal is different. The athletes' goals are different in high school. They want to have fun. They want to be a part of something bigger. They're not all trying. 98% of them aren't even thinking about going to college. So in terms of our media summit, I think that's the media breakout. I think that's the big thing that we came across, is there's lots of ways we can fill the gap. It always comes back to education, maybe some more guidelines to be given out nationally, not restrictions, just guardrails.
I'll let Mike fill in any gaps, but we went through a team approach to improving sporting behavior. Too often it falls on the AD only, the building principal. But if we're going to turn the tide with the official shortage, with the sporting behavior problem, it's got to be a team approach. And some of those who think they're far removed from the team, the us against them, and they're part of them, parents, participants, coaches, they all have to be a part of that. We talked about coaches being the biggest level influence as far as the culture. And they have as much influence as anybody in our buildings in establishing that culture. We talked about we need to recruit and encourage more upstanders. We have bystanders that are amused or appalled, but they do nothing. We need to have more upstanders. Anne Marie talked about being an upstander. We don't have enough of those. We need agents of change. Those are our upstanders. They're going to be the MVPs in our school cultures to bring about change. And parents don't come to us at the high school level having been trained the right way. Sometimes I know I made the mistake as a coach an AD expecting, that they should get it. What they get in too many instances is the wrong examples and the wrong ideas of how they should act in sporting event behavior. We have to train, we have to teach, we have to provide and continue to provide in intentional ways if we're going to see change. There are going to be hard conversations. There are going to be, sometimes letting people know they're not going to come back to our events if they're not going to be appropriate. But we need to have upstanders. We need to help people look through a different lens if there's going to be change.
Well, what I would say is, first of all, it's about education. If you've been in any classrooms, you've been in the hallways of your school, behavior today by people is much different than it was when I was a kid. It's a lot different, and there's a lot of factors that go into that, and we could debate that till the cows come home. Doesn't matter. Our reality is we have to be willing to educate people on what's proper behavior and what's not, what's acceptable and what's not. And if you're not willing to do that, you're in the wrong business. I mean, there's huge opportunity out there for us to work with young people, to work with their parents. I mean, my parents wouldn't let me misbehave. I mean, the worst thing that could happen to me if I did something at school when I was a kid is for it to get home to my parents. I wasn't worried about what happened to me in school. I was worried about what happened to me when I got home. And unfortunately, it's maybe not quite like that anymore. But that's just the reality. And so we have huge opportunity. We need to embrace the opportunity, not cower down to it. It's okay. Kids are going to misbehave. They got all kinds of stuff going on. Embrace your opportunity to create some relationships with kids when they do misbehave. You might turn that person around with their misbehavior and your conversation with them and creating a relationship with them that may last. You may be the only person that's ever taken the time to say anything to them about their behavior. Take the opportunity. Get to know what makes that person tick. It makes this, what we do, worthwhile. That's why we do it. It's about the kids.
You can also ask the parents for help, by the way, when you're looking for those upstanders. The parents love to help. Hey, I need you. I need you here because there's all these other crazy people. So I need you to be the one. You can pick the craziest one we want and ask them to be helpful.
And we brought up, those people need to know they're protected and supported because it's not easy to do, as you spoke about last night, and be that person that speaks up related to wrong way.
When you have a squad, though, it helps. I had two mothers on either side of me that were iron.
I got a couple games I'd like for you to come to.
I'll do it. I'm so
in the crowd.
Yeah, I'm so excited for my son's season with this new team. I can't wait. They don't know what's coming.
Thank you.